So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar by the BIA on reskilling for future growth technologies. We're hoping today to give you a really good overview of the current landscape across the UK. That's areas for growth and investment, looking at where you can find useful training materials and access online development activities, the sort of types of careers that might be available right now across all sorts of digital technologies and complex manufacturing. The speakers today have really given up their time to talk to you about their knowledge of the ecosystem and the things that they know about kind of future careers. What today is not is specific job opportunities, but we will be following up with everybody afterwards, sending out resources and links to lots of really useful tools and tips to help you think about those next steps in your career. So hopefully by the end of today, you will have some really good ideas of where the growth sectors are in the UK and the sorts of job opportunities that are out there and the sort of careers that are available. Give you something to think about as you go into the festive period, just to think about where those next steps might be. So we've got a range of speakers today. And our first one is going to give us a really nice overview of the current landscape across the UK. So Ben, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kate, for that introduction. So my name is Ben Folwell. I'm a principal consultant with the Sightline and Evaluate Consulting and Analytics team based in London. I've been with Sightline for about 7 years, and I now head up our BD&L practice area. And today I'm just really going to set the scene for the webinar, showing some key trends that we've observed here at Sightline over the last year, and with a few predictions and insights to what we expect to happen in 2024. So to begin, I'll just comment briefly on the state of the global biopharma R&D pipeline as we've observed it here at Sightline. So the chart here, we show the total biopharma industry pipeline from 2001 to 2023 as recorded in Sightline's pharma projects, so active products in clinical development. And as we can see, there's a trend upwards over the time period shown, with the state of the pipeline being, frankly, it's still at the largest it's ever been. So there's still growth. We have seen some slowdown in the growth in recent years, as there was a bit of an explosion during the pandemic, which has slowed slightly, but still the main message is that the pipeline is as large as it's ever been. So if we look to break this down slightly more to see what might be driving this growth, we can look at the status of the pipeline by therapeutic class or therapy area. And as we see, anti-cancer products or products in development for oncology indications continue to dominate the pipeline, even with substantial growth between 2022 and 2023, where now we're seeing oncology constituting almost 40% of all drug development, which has increased from about 30% over the last 10 years. All the other therapy areas, or the next largest therapy areas, so products in development for neurology, metabolic, or anti-infectives, are approximately 1/3 of the size, but each of these has also observed growth over the last few years. And what we can also do with pharma projects is look at the products not just by their therapy area, but by their modality, let's say. So biotechnology products continue to increase as well. Again, with now over 40% of products in development really being products related to biotechnology rather than classic small molecules. And the last trend, another that we've seen continuing to increase, is the expanding scope of products in development for rare diseases, and how this continues to continue to increase. So now we've pulled out both biotech and rare diseases, we can quickly look at those in a little bit more detail. So as we've observed and as we've seen, the proportion of the pipeline constituted by products relating to biotechnology has increased over the past 20 years to the point now where it seems to be at about 44%. Firstly, of course, being driven by the rise of monoclonal antibodies and subsequently by the growth of cell and gene therapies in the last few years. where cell and gene therapy has had a prolonged period of double-digit growth, where now we record over 2,000 products. Of course, these can overlap. Cell and gene therapies, of course, can overlap, but 2,000 products within the cell and gene therapy category. So the expansion is slowing now, but what this means ultimately is, we can only expect more approvals related to cell and gene therapy in coming years, as we've seen, there's been so many more products entering the pipeline, and particularly the expansion of cell and gene therapies in indications outside of oncology. So as these new modalities see success in other areas, we expect investment and therefore more interest and more development to follow in areas outside of oncology, where these new and innovative therapies have been most successful initially. Of course, it's not the end of the story for small molecules as well, but small molecules are always going to be important to development. And what we've seen trends relating to small molecules in recent years is the, let's say, advances in related technologies, so, unlocking new targets for small molecules. So one example would be targeting RNA with small molecules, which has been facilitated by developments in mass spectrometry, where it's actually been possible to design small molecules that can target RNA as a legitimate therapeutic target. So now we wait to see the next wave of therapies, whether that be those related to RNA or RNA-based therapeutics or targeted protein degradation or other newer modalities that will continue to drive the growth of biotech and the increased proportion of biotech and new modality-related products in the pipeline. So next, just a brief comment on the state of rare disease drug development. So as we record it in pharma projects, as of last year, biopharma is addressing 718 individual rare diseases, which has doubled over the last 10 years. But of course, a huge white space remains in this area, as there are a total of over 7,000 known rare diseases. And again, related to technological advances and general scientific advances, as fundamental scientific research continues and understanding the pathology of these rare diseases, we hope that it will allow for the development of true disease-modifying treatments for all these diseases where there are currently no available treatments. The pipeline is continuing to grow for rare diseases at double-digit in pace, almost 10% each year, and this is accompanied by a huge rise in rare disease clinical trials that started in 2022 as well. And there's interest from across the board in rare diseases, with, of course, small companies, biotechs focusing on specific diseases, but the majority of the large pharma also getting on board with a focus on rare diseases, with over 50% of their pipeline being associated with rare diseases, in particular rare oncology diseases. So just with that, just a few very brief comments on takeaways and predictions for next year, and perhaps some trials to watch in 2024. A very nice review article published in Nature a few weeks ago, just highlighting again some trends or some new ideas that are expected to come through in 2024, where we're looking at applying base editing to LDL cholesterol lowering. So this would be a single course mRNA encoding base editor inside a lipid nanoparticle, a T-cell vaccine for HIV, so a CMV-based vector aiming to induce sustained T-cell response, so to prevent acquisition of HIV. Related to what's saying about indication expansion or the growth of cell and gene therapy outside of oncology, the first application of stem cells for Parkinson's disease. So this would be applying or transplanting dopogenic neurons directly into the brain for the first time in Parkinson's disease. And then lastly, an investigation into ADCs for brain metastasis. So not just the drug Enhertu itself in trials, but actually a more broader investigation into whether ADCs can be effectively used intracranially, despite their relatively large size. So lots of really interesting work going on, and we just hope to and wait to see the successes of these new modalities and these new applications of existing technologies next year, and the growth that will hopefully drive in the sector, and the interest and funding in the sector. So with that, hopefully that sets the scene, and I'll now pass on to Rebecca to speak next. Thank you.
Hi folks, I don't know, yes, you can see me, wonderful. And just by true interaction, because I'm just looking at a black screen, if you could just say, if someone could put in the chat, if you can hear me all right, that would be super too. So yeah, wonderful to be here, and thank you very much, Chloe. Wonderful to be here, and thank you, Kate, for asking me to join you all today. Kate's briefing to me was, you're a bit atypical, which I thought was a wonderful introduction. And I think today, I know that a number of people on the call are thinking about different areas of maybe positioning their career, thinking about reskilling or you know, changing maybe their career trajectory. And I think that Kate, and this is the moment that Kate as chair can say that's not what you should be talking about. Kate invited me today to just kind of say, how did you get to where you are? Because it's not been in any shape or form a linear journey. And Kate, please keep me honest about that. So I'm privileged to be the UK Digital and Data Science Innovation Lead here at Roche UK. My background, though, is I kind of staggered into all of my roles. So my background is in psychology, fell in love with clinical research, and you just heard Ben talk about dopaminergic neurons being transplanted into brains of patients potentially. So my first dance with clinical research actually was with Parkinsonian patients and their families. And then I was hooked. I was like, I'm going to be a neuroscientist. I don't really know what that is or what that looks like, but I'm in love with the brain. It's the most amazing machine I think we'll ever own or ever have the privilege of owning, and what happens to it when it's damaged. So I then went and did a PhD and NHS post at the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery. And that basically looked at, can we find structural or functional signals of poor outcomes for patients that are having a part of their brain removed because it's the genesis of seizures, particularly for temporal lobe epilepsy. I then had the privilege of working in the Wellcome Trust at doing neuroimaging again with stroke survivors and with patients living with brain cancer. And just what I want to kind of underscore here is even that is quite yeah, please ask me any questions as well, right? Because otherwise it just becomes a bit of therapy for me. But even that, going from kind of psychology to neuroscience, was quite a jump and quite a steep learning curve. But basically, it was about how I positioned myself on my CV. And I hope this doesn't sound condescending, but I think that that's been a theme throughout my career to date, is kind of saying what I've done, how can that be useful moving forwards? And am I applying for a job that potentially, if I can already do it, I shouldn't be applying? Because I think a job is there to stretch you, right? You're there to acquire skills, or at least that's my heuristic to life. And then you get to this T-junction as an academic. So I did some postdocs, particularly in psychopharmacology. So that was on, very fortunate, that was on Channel 4, and it was on cannabis, essentially medicinal cannabis. The best thing about that, though, was that I got a Home Office dispensation to carry cannabis around London. As you can probably imagine, my folks didn't really think it was a great job, because you know, your folks, they just want to be like, yeah, you know, she's in academia, and I'm like, actually, I'm kind of an okay drug dealer. So So that was slightly awkward, but it was a wonderful learning experience, and I had some media training and things like that. And then you get to this T-junction, I think, as an academic, of going, well, what do I do now? Do I stay in academia? Do I go and do something else? And I'm very much a home pigeon, and I didn't want to leave home too much. I love, you know, being with my family, and so I didn't want to kind of jump around the country doing postdocs. And so I decided to try and use my quantitative skills in forming policy. So I was fortunate to join the Health Foundation, which, for those of you who don't know, is a non-governmental, it's an NGO, and go, how do we use this big data? You know, the NHS, as fragmented as the data landscape is, how do we use that information in order to try and inform policy? And what I learned there was quite interesting. I learned that you go from being a researcher where patients very kindly during their pre-surgical investigations let you scan them, and then you go into a room for 9 months talking about data sharing and getting, in my view, nowhere very quickly. So that was quite a frustration for me. But the point was also I had to learn R, so the statistical programming language. I'd never done that because as a neuroimage person, you basically click buttons. The skill that you have is going, does the experiment make sense? Do these areas of the brains that have lit up essentially are the ones that we expected or not? So that was also a bit of a jump. And then fortuitously, IBM were looking for these things called data scientists. And I was like, and this was before it was like the coolest or sexiest thing of the 20th century to do, or 21st century. And I thought, well, how hard can that be, right? I identify as a scientist and I work with data, and surely it's just a thing. Turns out it was actually a proper thing. So off I went to Ohio for a number of weeks. And I still remember calling home being like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm with people that their background is like, I built a computer when I was an embryo, and I won chess championships when I was 2, and I built a computer when I was 4. And I was like, oh yeah, I just, you know, never done any coding in my life. So that was a very steep learning curve. But eventually I crafted a role in Watson Health, so leading that European business. And the fact that they're selling it has nothing to do with me. And then one day they said, it's always a Friday, isn't it? You always get like, you know, called round on a Friday. We're moving you all into the financial part of the business. Now I can't even run my own bank account. And I was like, I can't advise clients around wealth under management. You know, I can barely budget myself in a week. So that's probably not a good idea. So I gave in my notice, to my family's absolute dismay, because I just kind of, and I'm hoping what I'm trying to get across to you is I have no plan other than I just want to go to organizations where I get to use my quantitative skills in healthcare and hopefully drive societal good. And so I gave in my I just said, no, I'm not doing that. And then I didn't really know what I was going to do. So I spammed LinkedIn. That would be another area, I think, you know, to encourage you to do, like networking and kind of reaching out to people. And an organization called KPMG replied and said, oh, well, you know, we have, and I didn't really know what they are or what they did. They are a big accountancy firm, one of the big 4 as termed, and said, oh, we're looking to bring into our public sector part of the organization. How do we use data to help clients? And I thought, well, that sounds brilliant. So I eventually sculpted a role there and decided to leave after I was a co-lead on building the workforce part of the organisation for Nightingale London. And then again, just fortuitously, someone said, oh, this place called Roche, didn't know who they were, are looking for a data person. And would you like to come and have a chat? And so I did. And so my role to date is about how do we work with an ecosystem of partners, whether that be our regulator, the MHRA, whether that be our European cousins, whether that be the NHS or universities or our government, to go, how do we move a technology through the software development lifecycle? And what does that look like? What are the skills around that? And so I've been in post 2.5 years. Who knows if I'll be in post after this webinar? We shall see. But again, I came into pharma having no clue at all what pharma really was or did. And I think one of the things I just want to leave you with is, you heard Ben talk about gene therapy, mRNA technologies, spoke about the pipeline. And one of the things that I just want to underscore is we're very good in pharma at talking about medicines and drugs, because that is our fundamental business and what we do as an organization. And I feel very proud to work in that industry. However, how do you find the right ligand, for example, and how do you monitor through clinical trials? What do you really measure what matters to patients? So there's this whole piece around digital endpoints at the moment in clinical trials. You know, how do we make clinical trials more inclusive using technology or not using technology? And then when you move through the kind of pharma value chain, you can tell that I've been in industry 2.5 years. But when you move from that kind of early research and development phase to that post-market authorization phase, every single piece of that pie requires a skill set that is not in place at the moment. And our trade body, the ABPI, Association of British Pharmaceutical Industry, recently did, and I know Chloe will send a link, a skills gap assessment. And essentially we are using, and I know that these are kind of jazz hand terms, but we are using artificial intelligence and forms of machine learning to try and see how can we accelerate getting medicines to patients. And then when we do get them to patients, how do we then monitor them in the real world, right? Because that's very different from a clinical trial. And how do we innovate in pharmacovigilance? And so I'd encourage you, I was just about to move on, Kate, thank you. I would encourage you to kind of look at those things. What I did was I had the internet and a laptop, so I upskilled myself using online courses like Coursera and others. There are others available, but you can audit them for free. And with that, thank you for your time, and I will hand over to Ian.
Excuse me. Thank you, Rebecca. So good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Let me know if you can't. As you can probably tell from what you see on the screen, I've been around for quite a long time. I've seen this industry ebb and flow positively and negatively over probably 4 decades, actually, which is a very long time. So I am originally a pharmacist and a small molecule guy, and spent most of my career in GlaxoSmithKline. I retired in 2017, and I wasn't quite ready to hang up my boots, and I've had a second career for the last 6 years or so in cell and gene therapy, and I have found the transition personally absolutely stimulating, and I'll come on to that a little bit later. I'm also very optimistic about the future in the UK for our industry, and particularly in manufacturing, and I'll try and substantiate that. You saw the data from Ben, which was amazing, and what I'll try and do is support that data with a bit of how it feels. So 2023, I've transitioned through the year from neutral, probably not pessimistic, but neutral about our prospects as an industry, to optimistic, as I mentioned. The reason for that is actually government policy, believe it or not. So if coupled with all of the data that Ben showed about the science, which is phenomenal, I feel that the government policy is particularly helpful. The other thing I think that made me neutral towards a little bit pessimistic at the beginning of the year was the financial situation that we're in, that has undoubtedly affected the smaller end of our industry. And that is a transient condition. The more permanent condition will be driven by the science, and it will be driven by the governmental policy. So we currently have a Conservative government that recognises manufacturing. I am going to talk about manufacturing briefly, recognises that as a real value add to the UK economy, and 520 million has been pledged to the industry manufacturing sector, life sciences, from 2025. Now, the Conservatives may not get in the next general election, but the Labour Party also sees life sciences and manufacturing as a very important plank of their strategy that will become more visible in the coming months. So I am very positive and optimistic. My job at the moment is I'm a part-time guy, but I chair Rosalind Cell Therapies in Edinburgh and the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult. Now, there's a lot of data on the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult, particularly about the strength and health of the cell and gene therapy sector of our industry. I suggest you just look that up on the website. Steve will give you some other data as well, I think, that will be helpful. Why did I transition? Well, firstly, the science is really interesting. I'm not a great scientist. I'm a manufacturing guy. I'm a practical person. I like to make things. And maybe that's best exampled with Rosalind Cell Therapy, which is in Edinburgh. So you may have noticed on a little in brackets, Casgevy as a medicine that was attributed to CRISPR. It's a product for sickle cell disease and for beta thalassemia that's made in Edinburgh. And whilst Ben's data looked at the number of products emerging through, there's another very, very important factor in this, which is cell and gene therapy is now moving into what I would call much higher prevalence disease. It's not really rare disease. Sickle cell disease is not rare. Beta thalassemia is no longer rare. And it's creating a huge opportunity for growth. The UK is very well positioned for this because we've been at the front end of it, partly because of the catapult, but partly because of the great academic science we've got. So I remain very optimistic, and I think there will be growth in the cell and gene therapy area. I think there will be growth in the UK because of our science, because of our history, and because of the government emerging policy, which is absolutely critical. And again, just I'm kind of trying to emphasize the transition process, if you are predominantly small molecule background, to cell and gene therapy could be a little bit intimidating, but actually in manufacturing is the skill. Manufacturing is the competence. There is an element of cell and gene therapy technology being important, but if you have the basics in manufacturing, this is entirely transferable. And just to really back that up, at Rosalind, we recruited a new head of quality about 12 months ago, and she is predominantly, almost exclusively small molecule, and she has just come in and taken the whole quality and compliance area to a different level. So it's very transferable. And again, just to emphasize with a little bit of numbers, Rosalind Cell Therapy was 50 people 2 years ago. It's now 250 people. So when a company like Rosalind gets the right kind of product and the success through regulatory audits, as we've just seen, the opportunity for growth is very, very significant. So I think if I was leaving you with a couple of messages, I am quite a, let's say, experienced person, or at least I have been around for a long time. Some people might say old. So if I can transition from being predominantly small molecule into cell and gene therapy successfully, then anybody can. And I do think the UK is very, very well positioned. And so I am going to transfer to Louise and just say thank you for listening. If there's any questions towards the end, I'd be more than happy to help answer them.
Thanks, Ian. Hi, everyone. So I'm Louise Taylor. I work for CPI, and I'm just going to take a bit of a different approach to it. So I'm going to go through a little bit on RNA therapeutics and vaccines, because I know that's something that's being talked about a lot. And I just want to hopefully show you this transferable skills and the opportunities in this one area as well. So for those of you who don't know CPI, just really quickly, we were founded in 2014. We've got over 600 staff, and we do have multiple facilities, predominantly across the northeast of the UK. And we are a high value manufacturing catapult. So we operate in markets which include things like biotechnology, pharma, which encompasses the National Biologics Manufacturing Centre, the RNA Centre of Excellence, which I'll talk about, and our Medicines Manufacturing and Innovation Centre. And we also have digital and health tech teams as well. We've got a really important job of sitting between research and invention and the commercial market. So we don't have our own products. We help to get other people's products to market as quickly and as successfully as possible. So just to give you a bit of an overview, so we've got our biologics facility. Here we perform development and optimization and look at bespoke manufacturing processes, both with collaborative research and development, but also fee-for-service offerings. And we work on a wide range of expertise, including upstream, downstream, and analytical. So we look at cell-free, microbial and mammalian expression systems, continuous manufacturing, and also things like high throughput screening. And just focusing a little bit more on the RNA therapeutics, before 2020, we'd already been starting to look at encapsulation of cell-free expression. So when we were approached by the UK's Vaccine Task Force, we already had some of the skills needed to support the creation of a manufacturing and supply chain for a self-amplifying RNA vaccine. And in September this year, we officially opened our dedicated GMP facility for RNA encapsulating manufacturing. So this is our facility. It is a purpose-built facility. We've got QC labs, we've got production labs, and it's a modular build. And another thing that we wanted to do to support this is we realised that, you know, yes, RNA technology has been around for a while, but its use has massively increased and is continuing to increase post-pandemic. And as part of this, we realised that actually the skill set needed needs developing and needs expanding. So what we've done is we've put together some courses that have been developed by our scientists that have hands-on experience to look at things like an introduction to RNA therapeutics. So what are they? How do they work? We've got manufacturing courses, we've got analytical courses to really help to upskill the industry. And that's something that I'm just going to touch on because there's so many transferable skills in this area. So when we talk about analytics, yes, it's a different modality, but I'm sure there's lots of techniques there that you're already very familiar with. And, you know, as we said, it's an expanding technology area. And this is because we need a lot smaller doses. There's loads of benefits. It's non-integrating. We can produce it a lot quicker because there's no host, so we don't have to run a bioreactor for 2 weeks. So you can see all these things really help to increase the opportunities that RNA can target. And just to reiterate that, we're not just talking about vaccines. We've got things like oligonucleotides, RNA therapies, we've got microRNAs, and then also other cancer therapies and things like that. So when we look at how is it different to traditional biotech, so yes, we've got a genetic sequence of the protein of interest, but we also have no cell line. So we've got no cell line development. And like I said, we're not running a bioreactors. It's more a small scale enzymatic reaction. And then at the end, we do an encapsulation and fill finish. So the facilities are smaller. It's a simpler production, but raw materials are more expensive. So there are similarities, there are differences. And just to highlight that further, here's a typical process. And some of you might be very familiar with some of these technologies. So tangential flow filtration, chromatography, whereas some of them might be a little bit newer, so encapsulation and in vitro transcription. And again, we can look at how that can move to continuous. So some of you might have experience in continuous digitalization that could be applied as well. And just touching on a couple of those unit operations, when we also think about what experience do we have on equipment. So some of you will be familiar with wave systems, TFF systems, chromatography systems. So when it comes to building out a facility and building out manufacturing, we've got three options really for the workforce. We can buy talent, we can retrain, and we can build. And when we look at retraining, comparing it to small molecules, it's very similar to the encapsulation. It's low volume and it's more chemistry rather than biology. And also there's a lot more solvent handling. When we look at the biopharm workforce, it's aseptic working. We've got liquid handling, chromatography, TFF and filtration are all areas we'll be familiar with. And it's a GMP regulated environment. And again, just to mention, we do have those courses, but hopefully what I'm trying to get across here is it might sound like a completely different area to go into, but there's so many translatable skills and areas that you'll have experience in that you'll be able to apply into this new expanding technology. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Stephen. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. Excellent. I'll just share my slides. Won't be a second. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Steve Stewart. I'm head of skills at Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult. I've been at Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult for 2.5 years. I joined from GSK, where I'd spent just over 10 years working in skills and talent and apprenticeships. So at Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult, we're involved in several different skills initiatives. We've got our Advanced Therapies Apprenticeship Community, or ATTAC, and that's been running since...
Sorry to interrupt, we can't see your slides.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Now we can, thank you.
Oh, we practiced that before as well, and it's gone wrong. Excellent. How's that?
Perfect.
Excellent. Right. So we've got the Advanced Therapies Apprenticeship Community, or ATTAC, for short. So we've got over 340 apprentices across the UK studying a variety of different disciplines. That's not just early talent apprentices coming in. It's roughly 50-50 with early talent apprentices taking the first job, but people using apprenticeships to upskill and grow their careers and maybe take second careers and build an entirely different skill set. We also look after the Advanced Therapy Skills Training Network, or ATSTN for short, because that's quite a mouthful. And within that, we've got an online training platform. We work with some national training centres to make sure that we've got face-to-face delivery spread out right across the UK. And we've got a tool called the Career Converter as well. And I'll come on to that in my session. We've also got, we've just opened about a year ago, the Skills and Training Laboratories, which are based in Stevenage. They're taking people through various different courses, really, really good space, state-of-the-art skills and training lab. We're looking at AR and VR interventions down there. So really good options for people who are looking to upskill either through the training centre in Stevenage or through our National Training Centre network. So Ian set me up really nicely for this with his comments around the skills demand report and some of the positivity that we've got in advanced therapies at the moment. So really busy slide, and we'll send the link out so you can download the skills demand report, because there's lots of really, really interesting facts and figures in there. But the key bits are these two here that the first is over in. At the moment, we've got 6,232 people in the sector. And we expect in the next 5 years that's going to expand to just over 10,000, so 10,161. So just over a 60% increase, which is absolutely fantastic. To find this data, we spoke to just over 50 employers within the sector, and we think that they were the largest employers, and we think that covered around about 90% of all the biomanufacturing in the UK. So we got a really good insight into what companies are looking for, where they are now, and where they think they're going to be in 5 years' time. And not going into this in the interest of time, you can see a really steady trend line of that growth within advanced therapies, which Ian was talking about. So underneath that, we also asked which job roles people will be looking to recruit into. So again, busy slide, but we'll send the link out to download this. But you can see here are all the different job areas, job families that we asked people about. And here in this column is the predicted increase in 2020 by 2028. So you can see every single job family there is going to experience, hopefully, an increase. We also asked people when we did the surveys where they thought there was a level of concern. So the people are really concerned now about employing people within manufacturing and within total quality, within regulatory affairs, and then an emerging concern is around digital and informatics. So there's some real opportunity within the sector for people coming in and looking to grow these skills and develop into these roles. So to help people do that, I mentioned earlier, we've got a few tools that are helping people transition into the sector. One of the ones we've developed is the Career Converter. So through the weird and wonderful dark arts of data science, people can access the Career Converter. It's totally free. And then through the data science that sits behind it, you can drop your CV in, your job title, your job description. It'll look through that and give you some recommendations about job roles that could possibly suit you within the sector. So this is a fantastic tool for people who are really thinking about, what could I do in advanced therapies? Could I really fit there? What skills have I got that are transferable? What gaps would I need to fill? At the end of this, you get a really great report that tells you what roles that you're matched against, which skills and competencies you've got already, and then the ones that you might need to develop to be successful in that role. So it gives you a really good indication of what you can move into. At the end of it as well, you'll get the opportunity to speak to myself or one of my team. You can click on a link and book an appointment, or it takes you through to some recruitment agencies and a map of the UK, which shows you some of the firms that are recruiting in this area. So really nice tool to just start with and understand where you could possibly fit within this sector and what gaps that you've got that you need to fill. We've also got the online training platform, which I mentioned earlier. So the online training platform is free for people to access. There's training on there for every different budget. About 50% of the courses are free at the moment for people to take. And it caters for people with all different levels of experience. So you can see from the categories on the right-hand side, we've got courses through everything from bioprocessing through to personal development. So people who are transitioning through jobs at the moment, hopefully there's some really good material on there that'll help you with that journey. There's some really good stuff about building skills in project management and leadership, and then also those deeper technical skills as well. So it's free to register for. You just need a license to go on there, and then you can explore all the different elements of training. There's 850 different pieces of training on there, and to help you navigate, you can click whichever job role you're interested in, and it'll recommend some training for you from intermediate level through to advanced, so that hopefully you can navigate the system and find something that's really relevant for you. So this fits really, really well if you've done the Career Converter and identified some of those potential gaps of in your portfolio when you're looking to move and transition into a role in advanced therapies. You could hopefully fill some of those gaps by going on to the online training platform and seeing where some of these things are that you could upskill in. So that's a really quick overview of some of the things that we're doing in the advanced therapy sector. I think just going back to the slide with some of the different gaps on, I think it's really worth downloading the skills demand report. It gives you a really good insight into some of the areas where our sector is really looking to recruit people into over the coming years. And if you've got any questions, then I'd be happy to answer them after, or please make contact either through the Career Converter or contact me directly. And with that, I'll hand back to Kate.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you to all our speakers today. I think you've given us a really nice insight into what's happening across the UK. Quite broad in terms of all the different therapies and the different areas, whether it's manufacturing or digital or RNAs or gene therapies. So hopefully we've given people some really good insights into quite a range. I've got a couple of questions in the chat, and I'm going to come to Louise first to answer the question, which I'm just trying to find. It's about the technologies that you would recommend sort of looking at first, Louise. So the question is, what are the key technologies you would recommend that people retrain on first? And I guess to some extent that depends on where their skills lie to start with, but I think you touched on some of this in your presentation. I don't know whether Louise is frozen now. I think Louise might be frozen. Steve, is that something that you can talk about? Because you talked about the career converter there for cell and gene therapies, and then perhaps come to Ian across manufacturing areas.
Yeah, definitely, Kate. I think the career converter is that really good starting point to understand some of the job roles within our sector. These on the career converter, there's 16 different job roles there. You can have a look at the on the ATSTM website where it's housed. You can have a look at the different job titles and what they encompass. There's a little bit of a job description around each one, so you can understand a little bit more about what's involved in each of these different jobs. And then through the career converter, you start to understand some of the skills and capabilities that are associated with them. That brings that out a little bit more. So as well as understanding where you're matched to it, you can do a little bit of an exploration as well around exactly what each job contains and what you need to do that.
Yeah, thank you. And Ian, what do you think in terms of what are the things that people should be retraining on? And I guess what are those sort of fundamental transferable skills that you see?
Well, 100% people should follow their heart and go for what they're really, really, really interested and passionate about. The second thing I would do on that, I suggest, Kate, is try and find the overlap of what they're passionate about with what's growing. And that will guide them as to, you know, I'm passionate about this and it's got the best chance for future progression. I would just repeat that manufacturing is not quite 100% transferable, but not far off. And the lady that became our head of quality she'd never spent a day in her life in anything associated with other than small molecules. And she brought in all of the processes, the QMS, all of the compliance processes, and we flew to Touchwood, because you always need to Touchwood, but we flew through MHRA and FDA inspections at Roslin. So I think follow your heart, actually. Do what you're passionate in. In circumstances like this is a real chance to say, do you know what? I can really try and do what I want now.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. And I think you're right. You know, once you've got those GMP skills or their sort of, you know, laboratory behaviours, etc., a lot of them is it's not necessarily the technology, it's the behaviours and the awareness of the environment that you're operating in, isn't it? Oh, Louise is back now as well. So Louise, what did you know in terms of the technology?
Sorry, Kate, it seemed to kick me out. I would reiterate what Ian said. I think whatever you're passionate about, but also look at those wider skills. Are there skills that you already have that you could build on? So hopefully, you know, if you are interested in the RNA technology, for example, I mentioned some of the systems you might have downstream experience. Have a look at how that downstream experience might support a move into RNA. Look at online, there's so many articles, videos on what does that process look like, what are the companies working in that area. Reach out to people on LinkedIn, but also some of the softer skills, which I know, Stephen, you said, you know, that there are some free courses on your platform, things like project management, management in general. You know, really think about where you want to go to next, what areas interest you, and how can you kind of leverage the skills that you've got and apply them just to a different different company.
Thank you,
different
Louise.
opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for that. And we've got a question in here for Ben, actually. So really interested in all the presentations that have been given. There's a question specifically about noting that there was some decline in biotech and cell and gene therapy in some of your graphs there. Does this reflect a downturn in the investment? And is there expected to be an upturn in 2024?
I think it's more a reflection of a slowdown. So we saw very rapid growth between from about 2015 until today, but it's a slowdown as let's say the easy, not easy, but the obvious routes to go were reached as technologies reached a certain point. But then as further improvements happen, we can only imagine it's going to continue. As we lots of people mentioned throughout today. The application of cell and gene therapies increasingly outside of what would be considered a rare disease, that trend I would only expect to continue. So maybe not an upturn immediately in 2024, but I would imagine that we would still continue to see growth in the area going on for the next 5 to 10 years, certainly. And there's lots of technologies related to, the overlaps are only going to continue to increase between cell and gene therapy and CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing, base editing. They're all interlinked mRNA, RNA-related technologies. So I certainly think we'll continue to see growth in the area.
Yeah. And I suppose is that growth a question for everybody, really? And I'll start with you, Ian. In terms of a question on the growth, do you see that being in sort of that large pharma area or within the biotech SMEs? And if you're moving from one to the other, what do you see as their transferable skills, and what specifically are SMEs looking for over maybe some of that experience within large pharma, having come from one of the biggest in terms of GSK, Ian?
Well, I think the growth, I think, will be predominantly in small, medium-sized enterprise SMEs, I think, in the main. And that's always going to be a wee bit more high risk, because sometimes they succeed and sometimes they don't. So I think that the growth will be there. And what I observe happening, Kate, is that a successful SME quite quickly gets bought up by a big pharma. So they kind of morph into each other eventually. On people who come in from big pharma, actually, and again, I don't just speak for the company I used to work for, but the sophistication of a big pharma company is far bigger than I thought it was. So I found that stuff that I thought was normal in big pharma was quite unique in smaller companies. So I think that people who would maybe leave in a big pharma environment need to just reflect a little bit on all the things they think are kind of normal for a big pharma. They're actually very, very, very helpful in small companies. So I think that that's often an underappreciated benefit of having been in a big pharma. And I think the other thing that I'd say in that is that, it's a bit of a release when you get into a small company, because, the bureaucracy that does exist in big pharma, and it does, or the process that exists in a big pharma usually doesn't exist in a small company. So all of a sudden you think, wow, you can make stuff happen here really, really quickly. If I'd had my time again, much as I loved the company I worked for, I should have left earlier.
Yeah, and I think some of the catapults that we've got online today, so both Steve and Louise, you work with a large amount of SMEs within your network. What are the sort of differences that you see, and how do you see those roles being different in different sized organisations? So Steve first.
Yeah, I think exactly what Ian said. I've transferred from large pharma to a smaller business, and I think sometimes it can be quite scary. But the amount of opportunity that you get, I think in big pharma, you're kind of expected to stay in your lane a little bit, and this is your job, and this is what you're going to do. Whereas I've come to the catapult and I can get involved in absolutely anything, and I'll be supported to do that. And I think the skills that some of these smaller businesses are looking for is that kind of flexibility, adaptability. You can get involved in lots and lots of different things. It can be quite scary if you've come from that background, and it does take a little bit of a time to flex into that. But I think what the SMEs are looking for is just that adaptability, that flexibility, that willingness to get involved in lots and lots of different things. And what you'll get back from that is some absolutely fantastic development.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about sort of the risk of some of that as well, because it's slightly different working in a smaller organisation. Do you see that, Louise, with the SMEs that you work with in your network?
I mean, yeah, it's always there's always going to be an area of risk there because it's a new technology or a new product that's coming through. But I think, as Steve said, there's a lot of opportunities there as well to either put some of your skills to use in a different area, or get involved in multiple areas. So, for example, you might be technical, but you might also get involved with project management, maybe some finance. And it's a great opportunity to try out different things that you're interested in. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I would say as well, when you're looking at job adverts, especially for some of the smaller companies, you don't necessarily know what you need. So don't be afraid to say, I don't meet all of those criteria, but this is what I'm bringing to the company. And there might be a surprise there that actually, that skill set meets something that we need or sounds interesting, and that might start a different conversation. So I think it's that flexibility and openness to areas that you know you're strong in and areas that you want to develop as well.
Yeah, thank you, Louise. That's really important, isn't it, to think about actually you don't need to tick all of the boxes on that job advert. You can bring something completely different as well, and perhaps that can shine through when you come through the interview. So just in terms of, we've got sort of 3 or 4 minutes left, I just wanted to think about sort of your final takeaways for people in terms of, so I'm giving you a heads up. So just thinking about, what are those top tips that you could give someone who's maybe thinking over the festive period about, where they're going to go next, where they can apply their skills, what are the sort of opportunities that are out there for them. So Ben, if you don't mind, I'm going to come to you first. What are sort of top tips from you?
Yeah, I think I mean, just thinking about myself, sort of remaining flexible and what a career in consulting has sort of meant for me. You have your areas of interest, and you learn the process of learning about a particular area or skill or whatever it might be. A similar sort of story to what Rebecca was talking about when she was here, how you can, don't be intimidated by some topic or something that you want to learn about. If you've become very strong in one area or one particular skill, you can certainly do it again in another one. I transitioned from the oil industry into the pharma industry, so it can be done if the will is there. So I think that's my kind of key thing for remaining flexible and remaining interested, and things will come.
And that's a really good, isn't it, transition from the oil into pharma. Ian, what's your top tip?
I think it would be focus on what you can do, Kate. So oftentimes you tend to think of, well, I don't know about that and I don't know about this, but focus on what you can do and then think about how you can apply that to the future world, not just next year, but 3 or 4 years from now. Think a little bit further ahead if you can and try and plot a little. See, I'm a planner, so I kind of like to plan. So think a little bit how you might plot your course. Yeah. And there is no right answer to this, actually.
No, there isn't. Everyone's an individual, aren't they? Everyone's got different passions, as you said earlier, different passions, different experiences. It's thinking about what you can offer, what your value is. Louise?
Yeah, I suppose I would say be a bit more confident in yourself. I think we're always very, a lot of people are very kind of self-dismissive of some of the experience and qualities that they have. So don't forget to kind of give yourself a little bit of a boost and say, do you know what, I can do this. But also, like you said, Ian, and everyone else has reiterated, if I've not done it before, it's a challenge. I can try. I can, put my name in the hat. Have a go.
I love that. Have a go. That's a brilliant saying to finish on. And Steve, really quickly, what would you say?
Be confident in your transferable skills. I think I read some job adverts out there and they're looking for an absolute needle in a haystack. No one has got everything they're asking for on that job advert. So, if you are 60, 70, 80% right for that, go for it. And you'll be amazed at the transferable skills you've got. Someone in our industry is absolutely flying and they've come from the brewing industry. And you think that the experience that you guys have got is probably far superior to that. So just be really confident in what you've done and how that's going to help you start to fly in this sector.
Perfect. Thank you very much. There's some really good tips there. So just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who's been online today. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Lots of really good tips. What we'll do is this is being recorded, so we'll send a copy of the recording and all of the tip sheets and website links that have been mentioned today to close off the webinar. So just with that, I'd like to say thank you very much and I wish you all a great break. Thank you.